It's okay, I've got you, Miles said,
Rustig afstaan op de
using the most
A2
soothing
richting de
tones he knew.
Stompjesbreugel.
He didn't know if she could understand him, but perhaps the calmness in his voice would reassure her. He checked her for injuries, finding a deep gash along one leg and several bruises. His training took over as he administered first aid, stabilizing her as best he could. As he worked, he studied her features. Her eyes held galaxies, her presence otherworldly yet vulnerable. She murmured something in a lilting tongue he couldn't comprehend, watching him with an intensity that spoke of fear and gratitude mingled together. Miles smiled reassuringly. I'm Miles. I'm here to help. He wasn't sure she understood, but her grip on his hand tightened, a universal sign he chose to interpret as trust. As the storm raged around them, in the relative safety of his ship just a stone's throw away, Miles prepared to venture into the unknown with his new mysterious companion. His life as a solitary space captain was about to change forever. Back aboard the Peregrine, Miles set up a makeshift medical bay in the cargo hold, which had enough space for the alien girl, whom he had started to think of as Isla, a name he fashioned from the sounds she made. As he worked to make her comfortable, he noted how she observed every move he made with an intense curiosity, her bright eyes never leaving him. Miles activated the translator module, hoping it could decipher her language. It struggled initially, the digital display flickering between incomprehensible symbols and broken snippets of English. Aila spoke softly, a stream of melodious words that slowly began to form coherent sentences as the AI learned and adapted. I am called Aila, she confirmed, her voice gaining confidence as she heard her own name in her speech. Thank you, Miles. I am far from my space. Your ship, Miles started, wanting to know more but careful not to overwhelm her. Was it an accident or were you attacked? Failed. Engine. I tried to reach the beacon on this planet, Ayla explained, her brow furrowing in distress.
Over 1000 meter, finish aanhouden en A50 verder volgende richtingsborden.
It was pure chance, or fate, that he had found her. Well, you're safe here for now, Ayla. We'll figure this out together. As she rested, Miles scavenged what he could from the remains of her ship. The technology was advanced, far beyond what he was used to, but he was adept at improvisation. Meanwhile, Ayla watched and occasionally offered guidance, her voice gaining strength as she recovered from her ordeal. The days passed with them working side by side, communicating through a blend of the translator's output and a patchwork of gestures and expressions. It was during these moments that Miles noticed the subtle shifts in their dynamic. Ayla was no longer just a survivor to be cared for. She was becoming a companion, an equal with much to teach about her world and its wonders. Their connection deepened as they shared meals, Miles introducing Ayla to standard ration packs, which she accepted with polite curiosity, and Ayla sharing tales of her home planet, Thalassa, a world of vast oceans and floating cities. Each story she told painted a picture of a place as rich and vibrant as the nebulae Miles navigated. It wasn't long before their peaceful routine was shattered by an unexpected threat. One evening, as Ayla was teaching Miles some basic phrases in her language, the Peregrine's sensors blared an alarm, an unknown vessel approaching fast. Miles checked the monitors, his stomach sinking as he recognized the insignia. Pirates, he muttered, clenching his fist. Skrill raiders. Ayla looked alarmed, understanding the danger immediately. They will want what is left of my ship, she realized, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. We won't let them take anything, Miles assured her, heading to the cockpit to prepare for what was coming. Ayla followed, determined to stand by him. As the Skrill raider ship loomed large on the Peregrine's sensors, Miles swiftly maneuvered into a defensive position, using the dense asteroid field as cover. The ship's AI, Vega, projected the most likely attack vectors based on the raiders' known tactics. Ayla, now more familiar with the ship's systems, assisted by recalibrating the shields to absorb the anticipated energy weapon discharges. Here they come, Miles warned, his voice tense as he initiated the countermeasures. The Skrill ship fired a volley of ion blasts, bright against the backdrop of space, which Miles dodged with nimble precision.
So I just bought a Starbucks, and while I was here, I also bought this location in Atlas Earth. Now, it earns me virtual rent that I can actually cash out.
Ayla, her fingers flying over the controls, managed to disrupt the Raiders' targeting systems temporarily with a well-placed electronic countermeasure. The skirmish intensified, with the Peregrine weaving through asteroids, the impacts of the smaller rocks clanging against the hull. Each maneuver brought them dangerously close to catastrophic collisions, but Miles's piloting skills and Ayla's quick thinking kept them one step ahead of the raiders. Got an idea, Ayla said suddenly, her eyes alight with a strategic fire. If we can lead them into the nebula's edge, the gas clouds could interfere with their sensors. We can lose them there. Miles nodded, impressed by her acumen. Let's do it. Hang on. He pushed the engines to their limits, the Peregrine hurtling towards the colorful, swirling gases of the Dakari Nebula. The Skrill ship, relentless, pursued closely but began to falter as the nebular gases thickened, their sensors clouded by the dense cosmic fog. Using the nebula's natural cover, Miles executed a series of deceptive maneuvers, creating false sensor echoes to mislead their pursuers. Ayla monitored the effects on the Raiders' systems, guiding Miles's actions with precision. Finally, as they cleared the nebula, the sensors showed the Raiders breaking off, confused and disoriented by the chase. Miles let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, and Ayla slumped slightly in her seat, relief washing over her face. We make a good team, Ayla, Miles said with a grateful smile, glancing at her. She returned the smile, her eyes sparkling with a mix of excitement and camaraderie. Yes, we do, Miles, thank you. With the immediate threat gone, they set a course back to the jungle planet to retrieve any remaining parts from Ayla's ship that could be useful for further enhancing the Peregrine. As they worked together, salvaging what they could, the bond between them deepened. They were no longer just survivor and rescuer. They were partners, each learning from the other, growing in respect and trust. That night, as they shared another meal aboard the Peregrine, the conversation turned to their next steps. Ayla expressed a desire to attempt a journey back to Thalassa, her home planet, now that her ship was irreparable. I can help you get there, Miles offered without hesitation. It's the least I can do. Ayla looked at him, her gaze intense and sincere. I would like that very much, Miles, but I also want to help you, as you have helped me. Perhaps there are places your ship cannot go, or mine could have taken us. Miles considered her words, realizing that their journey together could extend beyond mere necessity. There's a lot of universe out there, he mused aloud. Maybe it's time I saw more of it. Together we could explore places neither of us could reach alone. Ayla nodded, her face brightening at the prospect. Together, she agreed, her voice firm with resolve and hope. As they planned their route to Thalassa, the paths of their lives intertwining, neither Miles nor Ayla could have anticipated the adventures that lay ahead. But one thing was clear, the stars held much more for them, and they would face it side by side. After weeks of travel through hyperspace, the Peregrine finally emerged near the aquamarine globe of Thalassa, a planet where vast oceans covered almost 90% of the surface. Miles, who had grown up on arid Mars, was captivated by the sheer abundance of water. Ayla's home was a world of endless blue, dotted with floating cities and structures that shimmered beneath the waves. Ayla's excitement was palpable as they approached her home city, Lumara. It's beautiful, Miles remarked, genuinely awestruck by the sight of the sprawling aquatic metropolis. It is, Ayla agreed, a tinge of pride in her voice, and it's good to be home. Their arrival, however, brought more than just reunions. As they docked at the city's grand orbital station, Ayla was greeted not just by her family, but also by a council of Thalassan elders. They expressed their relief and joy at her safe return, but were also quick to delve into the implications of her absence and the loss of her ship. Miles attended the meetings as Ayla's guest, observing the dynamics of Thalassan politics. He learned that Ayla's family was one of the leading collectors of deep-sea artifacts, a prestigious but dangerous profession that bestowed considerable influence. Her unexpected disappearance and the destruction of her exploration ship had sparked a power struggle among rival factions. To solidify her family's claim and her own status, Ayla was tasked with completing a ceremonial dive to the planet's heart, the deepest part of Thalassa's ocean. It was a rite of passage delayed by her misadventures, now more crucial than ever.
When Talon was bleeding from his butt, his rear end. Police used their...
I want to accompany you, Miles said the night before the dive. His concern was evident despite his limited understanding of the dangers that lay in Thalassa's depths. Ayla hesitated, touched by his concern but wary of the peril. It's dangerous, Miles. The pressures are immense, and the creatures there are not known for their hospitality. But Miles was resolute. I've faced pirates and navigated nebulous storms with you. Let me face this with you too. Convinced by his determination, Isla agreed, and together they prepared for the dive. Equipped with a specialized submersible, they descended past the light-filled waters into the dark abyss of Thalassa. The deeper they went, the more alien the surroundings became. Bioluminescent creatures flickered like stars in the murky depths, casting an eerie glow on the submersible's hull. The journey was tense, with the pressure gauges steadily ticking in a grim countdown. Their destination was a cavern known as the Heart Chamber, a place few had visited and returned from. Legend had it that the chamber held artifacts of the ancients, Thalassa's first settlers, whose technology was highly advanced and revered. As they reached the chamber, they were awestruck by the sight of the ancient relics, illuminated by their craft's lights. But their wonder was soon disrupted by a massive creature, awakened by the intrusion into its domain. The beast, resembling a colossal squid with shimmering tentacles, attacked their submersible, its strength formidable. Working together, Isla navigated while Miles managed the craft's defenses. They employed sonic pulses, non-lethal but effective, to disorient the creature long enough to escape its grasp. With the artifacts secured, they ascended back to the surface, their mission a success. The Council, upon their return, was impressed by Isla's bravery and Miles' support, solidifying her family's influence and her place among her people. Having solidified her claim and secured her family's legacy with the successful retrieval of the ancients' artifacts, Isla's status among her people was elevated. However, the ceremony to officially recognize her achievements and her return was still pending. It was a time-honored tradition on Thalassa, one that involved not just a celebration of success, but also a public acknowledgement of the trials overcome and the bonds formed during such quests. The ceremony, known as the Rite of the Depths, was to be held in the Lumara City Amphitheater, an impressive structure built beneath the surface of the ocean, its transparent dome providing a panoramic view of the aquatic world outside. The city's inhabitants, along with various dignitaries from other parts of the planet, gathered, their bodies glowing subtly with bioluminescent tattoos that marked the festive occasion. Miles, dressed in Thalassan attire that Isla had provided, flowing garments that shimmered with the same luminescent quality as the tattoos of the natives, stood beside her as she prepared to speak to her people. He felt both honored and nervous, aware of his outsider status, yet proud to stand by Isla's side. As the ceremony commenced, Isla spoke eloquently about her journey, the trials she faced, and the invaluable assistance of her human friend. "Without Miles, I would not stand before you today," she declared, her voice resonant in the aquatic chamber. Her words not only elevated her own status, but also served to bridge the gap between her people and the humans standing beside her. After the formalities, as the celebration continued with music and dance, Isla and Miles had a moment to reflect on their journey together. "You know, when I first saw you, I never imagined we'd end up here," Miles admitted, his gaze taking in the festive scene around them. Isla smiled, her eyes reflecting the vibrant colors around them. "Neither did I, but I am grateful for every moment that led us here." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from one of Isla's aides. The Skrill raiders, it seemed, were not content to let their previous defeat go unavenged. They had regrouped and were now approaching Thalassa, likely seeking to capture Isla, or perhaps even to plunder the planet's resources. The news cast a shadow over the festivities. Isla's expression hardened with resolve. "We must defend Thalassa," she stated firmly. "My people, our home, it's under threat." Miles nodded, his own determination mirroring hers. "I'll stand with you, Isla. We'll defend your home together." The threat required them to leave the celebration prematurely. Together, they coordinated with Thalassa's defense forces, planning a strategy to repel the raiders. Miles's experience with space combat and Isla's knowledge of her planet's tactical advantages were instrumental in forming a robust defense. As the Skrill fleet approached, the battle commenced. Thalassan defense ships, sleek and designed for underwater agility, emerged from the oceans into space, their weapons charged. The Peregrine, too, was ready, its systems enhanced with Thalassan technology from the artifacts Isla had recovered. The battle was fierce, with Isla and Miles working in perfect sync. The Skrill were formidable, but the defenders of Thalassa were driven by the need to protect their home. Through ingenious tactics and relentless fighting, the raiders were eventually repelled, their ships retreating in disarray. After the Skrill raiders had been driven back and Thalassa secured, a sense of calm settled over the planet. Aila's reputation as a capable leader was solidified, and her people viewed Miles with a newfound respect. The celebration of the Rite of the Depths resumed, this time with an even greater fervor, as it also celebrated their victory and resilience. In the days that followed, as things returned to normal, Miles and Aila took time to reflect on their future. Thalassa was Aila's home, a place she loved deeply, but the galaxy was vast, and there were many adventures to be had. For Miles, his life had always been among the stars, wandering from one corner of the galaxy to another, and he found himself at a crossroads. Sitting together in one of Thalassa's floating gardens, watching exotic fish glide beneath the transparent walkways, they discussed their options. "I could stay," Miles proposed, half in jest, half serious. "There's a lot I could learn here, and not just about swimming." Aila laughed, her gaze affectionate. "And I could come with you. There's much of the galaxy I've yet to see. My duties here are important, but perhaps it's time I explored beyond Thalassa." The decision wasn't easy. Aila's responsibilities to her people weighed on her, just as Miles's nature urged him to roam. But as they talked, it became clear that their desire to stay together was stronger than any pull to a specific place. They decided to spend part of the year on Thalassa, with the remainder exploring the galaxy. Their first journey as a committed couple was to the Library of Saldor, a massive space station that housed knowledge from across the universe. Aila was eager to learn more about other cultures and technologies, while Miles looked forward to showing her the places he had only mentioned in stories. At the Library of Saldor, they delved into ancient texts and modern holograms, learning about lost civilizations and emerging sciences. Aila's quick mind absorbed the new knowledge, while Miles found a joy in seeing the universe through her eyes that he had never experienced alone. As they traveled from one system to another, visiting planets Miles had only heard of in passing, they encountered various challenges, from negotiating trade disputes on remote outposts to helping with natural disasters on frontier colonies. Each challenge brought them closer, their skills complementing each other in ways neither had anticipated. On a small, icy planet on the edge of the galactic rim, they helped a mining colony establish a sustainable habitat, using Aila's knowledge of ecosystems and Miles's experience with off-world construction. The gratitude of the colony was profound, and the couple left knowing they had made a tangible difference. Their travels weren't without peril, however. When a rogue comet threatened a populated research station, Miles and Aila worked tirelessly with the station's crew to divert the disaster. Aila's calm under pressure and Miles's quick thinking saved thousands of lives, earning them commendations from several planetary councils. Through all these adventures, their love for each other grew. They had become more than just companions. They were partners in every sense of the word. Each night, no matter where they were in the galaxy, they would look out at the stars and plan their next destination, their excitement for the future as boundless as the universe itself.
Gazed out the viewport of the hegemony flagship Eternal Vigil.
Alien Girl Instinct Human should return when he's older for saving her. So he did. The scorching heat from dual suns beat down mercilessly on the barren landscape of Proxima Centauri B, turning the rocky terrain into a natural furnace. 24-year-old Jack Harmon wiped sweat from his brow as he adjusted the environmental controls on his exosuit, his mind drifting back to memories that had haunted him for 10 long years. "Approaching designated coordinates," announced the ship's AI in its monotone voice. "Atmospheric conditions stable for landing." Jack's heart hammered against his ribs. 10 years. 10 years of military training, of pushing himself beyond human limits, of becoming the man he'd promised to be. All for this moment. All for her. "Begin landing sequence," he commanded, his voice deeper now than when he'd first crashed on this godforsaken rock as a frightened 14-year-old boy. The Colonial Forces rescue ship had found him 3 weeks after his escape pod malfunctioned, sending him spiraling toward this harsh alien world. 3 weeks that changed everything. 3 weeks that introduced him to Nalera, As the ship's landing gear extended, Jack closed his eyes, let the memory wash over him. "Stay back," the alien girl had shouted, her silvery hair whipping around her face as 3 hulking mercenaries cornered her against the jagged cliff face. Her golden-orange skin seemed to glow under the dual suns, intricate markings pulsing across her exposed shoulders and arms. 14-year-old Jack had frozen, hidden behind a boulder. His survival training told him to stay put, to remain undetected. But something about the fear in her eyes so human yet ringed with iridescent purple, made his heart clench. "Pretty little Australian," one mercenary growled, reaching for her tight black dress. "Worth a fortune on the black market." Before Jack could think, he was grabbing rocks, hurling them with all his adolescent strength. "Hey, ugly!" he shouted, his voice cracking. "Pick on someone your own size." The mercenaries had turned, momentarily confused by the small human child challenging them. That moment was all the alien girl needed. With graceful precision, she'd executed a series of moves that left 2 mercenaries unconscious. The third had lunged for Jack, but the boy had ducked, years of schoolyard bullying making him nimble. The alien girl had finished the job, dropping the final attacker with a swift kick to his head. When it was over, she'd approached Jack, her form-fitting dress accentuating curves that made the teenage boy blush furiously. "You have courage, little human," she'd said, her voice melodic with an accent he couldn't place. "Foolish courage, but courage nonetheless." She'd leaned down, her silvery hair brushing his cheek, and pressed her lips to his skin. The kiss was chaste, but left his face burning. "Come back when you've become a man," she'd whispered, her breath warm against his ear. "The reward will be worth it." The landing gear touched down with a metallic thud, jolting Jack back to the present. He'd spent 10 years obsessing over those words, over the mysterious alien girl who disappeared into the rocky landscape before he could even ask her name. "Environmental scan complete," the Reykjavik reported. "Local settlement detected 2 kilometers east." Jack checked his reflection in the viewport glass. No longer the scrawny, frightened boy who'd crash-landed here. His chestnut hair was still unruly, but his face had hardened, jaw squared with determination. The Colonial Forces armor fit his muscular frame perfectly, the result of grueling training and unwavering focus. He'd come back a man, just as she'd asked. The settlement came into view as Jack crested a rocky hill. Unlike the primitive structures he remembered, the Australian outpost had grown, with sleek buildings rising from the red soil. Guards patrolled the perimeter, their weapons more advanced than he recalled. "Halt!" one called as Jack approached. "State your business, human." "I'm looking for someone," Jack replied, keeping his hands visible. "An Australian woman. I met her 10 years ago." The guard's eyes narrowed.
The developer of the game, The Tower. I wanted to make a tower defense game that had nearly infinite number of upgrades and builds to try. The core fun of the game comes from gathering resources, failing, and spending those resources and upgrades in the workshop. Then you come out more powerful the next round. We've got a really strong community on Discord that loves to chat about strategy and ways to continue.
Visible. An Australian woman. I met her 10 years ago. The guard's eyes narrowed. Many Australians here. Name? Jack hesitated. "I don't know her name. She has silver hair, golden orange skin with markings. She saved me from mercenaries when I was stranded here as a teenager." Recognition flickered in the guard's eyes. "You speak of Commander Nylara." "Commander?" Jack's heart skipped. The mysterious girl had risen in rank. "Wait here," the guard ordered, speaking into a communication device. Minutes stretched like hours as Jack waited, the dual suns beating down. Finally, the settlement gates parted, and a figure emerged. Jack's breath caught in his throat. She looked exactly as he remembered. Ageless, beautiful, dangerous. The tight black dress had been replaced by a fitted uniform, but it did nothing to diminish her allure. Her silvery hair was longer now, braided down her back, but those purple-ringed eyes were unmistakable. She stopped several paces away, studying him with an intensity that made his skin tingle. "So," she said finally, her melodic voice sending shivers down his spine, "you've returned for your reward after all." Jack swallowed hard. "I made a promise." A smile played at the corners of her mouth. "Yes, you did." And now you're a man. She stepped closer, her scent, something exotic and intoxicating, filling his senses. The question is, what kind of man have you become, Jack Harmon? His name on her lips startled him. You know who I am? Neelara laughed, the sound like musical bells. I've known since the moment you threw those rocks. The real question is, she leaned in, her lips nearly brushing his ear. Do you know who I am? Follow me, Neelara commanded, turning with fluid grace that made Jack's pulse quicken. Her form-fitting uniform accentuated curves that were even more captivating than he remembered. The Australian settlement buzzed with activity as they walked. Jack noticed other Australians watching him with curious eyes. Some wary, others intrigued. He was clearly a novelty here. Your people don't see many humans, I take it, Jack remarked, lengthening his stride to match hers. Neelara's lips curved into a half-smile. They've seen humans. They've never seen one invited as an honored guest. She cast him a sidelong glance. They've certainly never seen one who earned the trial of ascension. The what now? Jack asked, his military training making him instantly alert. They reached a circular structure at the settlement's edge. Unlike the other buildings, this one appeared ancient, its stone walls etched with intricate patterns that reminded Jack of the markings on Neelara's skin. 10 years ago, when I told you to return as a man, Neelara said, placing her palm against the door, which hummed and slid open. I wasn't merely being coy. Among my people, to save the life of an Australian is to earn the right of ascension, a series of trials that determine worthiness. Jack followed her into a chamber illuminated by soft blue light. Worthiness for what? Neelara turned to face him, her purple ringed eyes intense. For joining, for becoming part of the Australian collective. She stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her golden orange skin. For me, Jack's mouth went dry. I'm not sure I understand. The kiss I gave you wasn't just a promise, she explained, her voice dropping to an intimate tone. It was a marking, a claim. By Australian custom, when one saves another's life, they earn the right to attempt union. Union, Jack repeated, the word hanging between them, charged with implications. Not just physical, Neelara clarified, though the way her eyes traveled over his body suggested that aspect wasn't insignificant. A joining of essence, of purpose. It's, difficult to translate into human terms. She gestured to the chamber around them. Ancient symbols glowed on the walls, pulsing with a rhythm that seemed to match Jack's heartbeat. Most Australians undergo the trial of ascension during adolescence, she continued. It tests not just physical strength, but character, intelligence, adaptability. No human has ever attempted it. And if I pass, Jack asked, his voice rougher than intended. Neelara's markings pulsed brighter. Then you would be the first human deemed worthy of full Australian companionship. The way she said companionship made heat rush through Jack's body. There was clearly more to this than she was saying. Cultural nuances lost in translation. And if I fail, you return to your world, having satisfied your curiosity about my promise. Her expression softened. There would be no shame in it. The trial is difficult even for Australians. Jack studied her face, searching for clues. Why offer this to me? You barely knew me. I knew enough, Neelara countered. Courage, selflessness, potential. Her fingers brushed his arm, sending electricity through his nervous system. Besides, I've been watching your progress since you left. Your rise through colonial forces, your actions in the Rigelian conflict. Jack's eyebrows rose. You've been monitoring me? Australians have resources throughout human space, she said with a mysterious smile. I needed to be certain you were developing into a man worthy of the trial. And am I? He asked, stepping closer. Neelara's markings pulsed in a pattern Jack somehow knew meant she was affected by his proximity. That remains to be determined. The trial will reveal all. That remains to be determined. The trial will reveal all. She moved to a control panel and activated a sequence. The chamber hummed with with energy. The first challenge begins at dawn, she explained. You should rest. What exactly will I be facing? Jack asked. Nilara's expression became serious. I cannot tell you. Preparation would defeat the purpose. The trial must test your true nature, not your ability to train for specific challenges. She stepped closer, her scent, exotic and intoxicating, filling his senses. Know this, Jack Harmon. No matter the outcome, you've already impressed me more than any human I've encountered. Her hand rose to his face, fingers tracing the spot where her lips had touched him a decade ago. The contact sent a jolt of pleasure through his body. Rest well, she murmured. Tomorrow you begin your journey to becoming something no human has ever been. As she turned to leave, Jack caught her wrist. The contact sent another surge of sensation between them, and he saw her markings flare in response. This reward you promised, he said, his voice low. Is it worth 10 years of waiting? Nilara's lips curved into a smile that promised things beyond his imagination. That depends entirely on how much you want it. Her free hand rose to his chest, resting over his rapidly beating heart. How much do you want it, Jack Harmon? The look in her eyes made his blood rush. Whatever trials lay ahead, Jack knew with absolute certainty that his return to this planet had set in motion something far more profound than he could have imagined as a 14-year-old boy throwing rocks at mercenaries. I'll see you at dawn, he said simply. Nilara nodded, her expression both pleased and expectant. Indeed you will, and then we'll discover exactly what kind of man you've become. The first rays of the dual suns had barely crested the horizon when Jack arrived at the ancient chamber. He'd spent the night in restless anticipation, his mind racing with possibilities of what the trials might entail. Nilara awaited him, but she wasn't alone. 5 Australian elders stood in a semicircle, their golden orange skin adorned with more elaborate markings than he'd seen on others. Among them stood a younger male Australian whose posture radiated hostility. This is Krell, Nilara explained, noticing Jack's gaze. He will oversee your first trial. Krell stepped forward, his silver hair cropped short against his copper-toned scalp. I protest this mockery, he announced, addressing the elders rather than Jack. No human should be permitted to attempt the sacred trial of ascension. The eldest Australian, a female with intricate markings that covered most of her visible skin, raised her hand. The ancient laws are clear, Krell. Any being who saves an Australian life earns the right to attempt the trial. Laws written before we knew other species existed, Krell countered, shooting Jack a contemptuous glance. Yet laws we still honor, the elder replied firmly. Prepare the chamber. Krell's markings pulsed with what Jack interpreted as frustration, but he complied, moving to a control panel embedded in the wall. Nilara approached Jack, her voice low. Ignore him. Focus only on what lies ahead. What exactly does lie ahead? Jack asked. Her purple ringed eyes held his. The chamber of reflection. It will draw from your mind your deepest fears, manifest them as reality. She placed a hand on his arm, the contact sending warmth through his body. Remember, what you see isn't real, but your reactions to it are. Before Jack could respond, the floor beneath him began to glow. Concentric circles of light spread outward, and a mist rose from hidden vents. Begin, announced the elder. The mist thickened, obscuring everything around him. Jack's military training kicked in. Control your breathing, assess your surroundings, identify threats. But as the mist swirled, it seemed to penetrate his mind, pulling at memories he'd buried deep. Suddenly, he was no longer in the chamber, but back on the battlefield of Proxima Centauri 4, where he'd lost half his squad to an ambush. The screams of dying men filled his ears. Blood soaked the ground. Not real, Jack muttered, forcing himself to remember Nilara's words. Yet the scene felt utterly authentic. The smell of plasma fire, the weight of his weapon, the bodies of his friends. Captain Reynolds appeared before him, accusation in his dead eyes. You left us behind, Harmon. You ran. I didn't run, Jack countered, his voice steady despite the guilt that threatened to overwhelm him. I followed orders to get the intel back to command. You abandoned us, another fallen comrade accused, materializing from the mist. Jack closed his eyes, centering himself. This isn't real. This is the trial. When he opened them, the battlefield had vanished. Instead, he stood in his childhood home, watching his father pack a bag. "I'm leaving," the apparition said, not looking at him. "You're not worth staying for." The words cut deep. His father had abandoned their family when Jack was 8, and part of him had always believed it was somehow his fault. "No," Jack said firmly. "You left because you were weak, because you couldn't handle responsibility. That's not on me." The scene shifted again. This time he stood before Nylara, but she was laughing at him, surrounded by Australian males. "Did you really think I'd choose a human?" she mocked. "You're not even worthy to breathe our air." Jack felt a stab of insecurity, the fear that he'd misinterpreted her interest, that he'd spent 10 years chasing a fantasy. But something about this vision rang false. The real Nylara's eyes held warmth, not contempt. "You're not her," he stated calmly. "The real Nylara wouldn't need to belittle someone to feel superior." The fake Nylara snarled, her face contorting unnaturally. The illusion wavered. Suddenly, Jack noticed something odd. A small device embedded in the chamber wall, pulsing with an energy that didn't match the patterns of the rest of the room. Military instinct took over. He moved toward it, ignoring the increasingly desperate illusions trying to distract him. The device was well hidden, but now that he'd spotted it, he could see it was foreign to the chamber's design. Without hesitation, Jack ripped it from the wall. The mist dissipated instantly. He found himself back in the chamber, the elders watching, with expressions ranging from surprise to approval. Krell stood rigid, his markings pulsing with unmistakable anger. "What is this?" Jack asked, holding up the device. The eldest Australian approached, examined.
Appear to be a multiple within speed water science fiction. It is a rare in Atlas Earth. There appears to be a multiple within PC.
Australian approached, examining it. An amplifier. It would have intensified the chamber's effects beyond safe levels. All eyes turned to Krell, whose copper skin had darkened with what Jack assumed was the Australian equivalent of a flush. "The human should face the true test of our ancestors," Krell defended, "not some watered-down version." "That is not your decision," the elder stated firmly. "You are removed from these proceedings." As two guards escorted Krell from the chamber, Nylara approached Jack, her eyes shining with something that made his heart race. "You did more than face your fears," she said softly. "You saw through deception. Few Australians have ever detected sabotage during their trials." Her hand brushed his, the contact sending electricity through his nervous system. "How did you know?" "The illusion of you felt wrong," Jack admitted. "It didn't match what I know of you." Nylara's markings pulsed with a rhythm that seemed to match his heartbeat. "And what do you know of me, Jack Harmon?" The way she said his name made heat rush through his body. "Not enough," he replied honestly, "but I'd like to learn more." The eldest Australian cleared her throat. "The first trial is complete. The human has succeeded despite interference." She nodded to Jack with newfound respect. "Rest. The second trial begins at dusk." As the elders departed, Nylara remained, standing close enough that Jack could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "You've impressed them," she murmured. "That's not easily done." "And you?" Jack asked. "Have I impressed you?" Nylara's lips curved into a smile that sent his pulse racing. "You impressed me 10 years ago with stones and courage. Today you showed something more valuable. Wisdom." Her fingers traced a pattern on his arm that left fire in their wake. "The man you've become is intriguing." The look in her eyes made Jack's breath catch. Whatever the next trial might bring, he knew with certainty that the reward Nylara had promised was becoming more enticing by the moment. The second trial chamber looked nothing like the first. As Jack entered at dusk, he found himself facing what appeared to be a miniature ecosystem, a domed space filled with alien vegetation, strange rock formations, and a thick reddish atmosphere that shimmered with heat. "The Chamber of Adaptation," explained the eldest Australian, her intricate markings glowing in the dim light. "This environment replicates the sacred grounds of ancient Australis. For millennia, our young have proven their worthiness by surviving its challenges." Jack studied the chamber with a soldier's eye. The temperature readings on his wrist device were climbing rapidly, well beyond human comfort levels. "The atmosphere contains elements toxic to your human physiology," the elder continued. The flora responds aggressively to foreign presence. The ground itself will resist your steps. Sounds homey, Jack remarked dryly. A hint of amusement crossed the elder's face. To complete this trial, you must retrieve the emblem of ascension from the center of the chamber and return it here. You have one planetary rotation. Jack nodded, removing his outer armor. The less weight, the better. One final condition, the elder added. No technological assistance. Your suit's environmental controls must be deactivated. That complicated things. Without his suit's protection, the chamber's atmosphere would quickly affect his breathing and vision. As he disabled his suit's systems, Jack noticed Nalara watching him with an intensity that made his skin tingle. When their eyes met, her markings pulsed with a rhythm he was beginning to recognize as concern. Begin, announced the elder. Jack stepped into the chamber. Immediately, the heat engulfed him like a physical force. The air tasted metallic, burning his lungs with each breath. The ground beneath his feet shifted subtly, as if trying to unbalance him. Gritting his teeth, he pushed forward. The vegetation reacted to his presence, fronds curling away or reaching out with thorny appendages. One plant released a cloud of spores that made his eyes water and skin itch. Friendly, he muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. He'd covered perhaps a third of the distance when he noticed something odd. A patch of vegetation that seemed more aggressive than the rest, its coloration slightly off. Military instinct made him pause. Picking up a small rock, Jack tossed it into the suspicious area. The vegetation erupted violently, releasing a cloud of dark spores that dissolved the rock on contact. That's not part of the test, he realized. Someone had introduced a deadly variant into the chamber, and there was only one person with both motive and opportunity. Carefully circumventing the trapped area, Jack continued toward the center. His vision was beginning to blur from the toxic atmosphere, and each breath felt like inhaling fire. The ground shifted more aggressively now, forcing him to constantly adjust his balance. Finally, he reached the central platform where a small crystalline emblem hovered in a beam of light. As Jack reached for it, movement caught his eye. A panel in the chamber wall had slid open, revealing Krell with what appeared to be a control device. The saboteur's eyes widened in surprise at being spotted. Before Jack could react, Krell activated the device. Instantly, the chamber's environmental systems went haywire. The temperature spiked, and the already toxic atmosphere became a swirling vortex of caustic elements. Jack grabbed the emblem and dove for cover as vegetation around him began to wither and die from the extreme conditions. Through watering eyes, he saw the chamber door burst open and Nylara rush in, environmental suit hastily donned. "Jack!" she called, her voice muffled through her mask. "Nylara, stay back!" he shouted, but she was already moving toward him, navigating the dying vegetation with practiced ease. A rumble shook the chamber. The environmental systems were overloading, the delicate ecosystem collapsing. Jack spotted Krell fleeing through the maintenance panel. "The chamber's going to breach," Nylara warned, reaching his side. "We need to get out." "No, not without stopping him," Jack insisted, gesturing toward the panel where Krell had disappeared. Nylara hesitated, then made a decision that clearly went against protocol. She removed her mask and pressed it to Jack's face. "Breathe," she commanded. The clean air cleared his vision instantly. Before he could protest, she was pulling him toward the maintenance panel, her own breathing becoming labored in the toxic atmosphere. They squeezed through the opening just as a section of the chamber ceiling collapsed. The maintenance corridor was narrow and dimly lit, but Jack could see Krell's retreating form ahead. "He's heading for the environmental control hub," Nylara gasped, her golden-orange skin paling from exposure to the toxic elements. "If he disables the settlement's main systems..." Jack understood immediately. The entire Australian settlement could be at risk. Despite his own exhaustion, he surged forward, closing the distance to Krell with determined strides. The saboteur turned, surprise and hatred contorting his features. "You should be dead, human!" "Sorry to disappoint," Jack replied, lunging forward. Krell was quick, but Jack's Colonial Forces combat training gave him the edge. A swift strike to Krell's wrist sent the control device clattering to the floor. Jack followed with a takedown that pinned the Australian against the wall. "It's over," he said firmly. Nylara caught up, her breathing ragged but her eyes fierce. "Why, Krell? Why endanger our entire settlement?" Because he threatens everything, Skrill spat, glaring at Jack. Humans cannot be allowed into our sacred traditions. They'll corrupt everything we are. Security personnel arrived, taking Krell into custody. As the immediate danger passed, Jack became acutely aware of Nellara's condition. Her exposure to the toxic atmosphere had left her weakened, her markings pulsing erratically. Without hesitation, he swept her into his arms. Where's your medical facility? Down the corridor. She managed, her body surprisingly light against his chest. But Jack, the trial. He looked down at her, this extraordinary being who had risked her life to help him. To hell with the trial. The Australian medical chamber was unlike any hospital Jack had seen. Nelara was placed in a regeneration pod filled with a luminescent fluid that seemed to interact directly with her skin markings. She'll recover fully, the Australian healer assured him. Her choice to remove her protection was unexpected.
Who told you you could touch me? Leave before you embarrass him.
My wife?
Jack stood vigil by the pod, the crystalline emblem still clutched in his hand. The elders arrived, their expressions grave. You retrieved the emblem despite sabotage, were the eldest acknowledged, and prevented a greater catastrophe. But the trial was interrupted. With respect, Jack replied, his eyes not leaving Nellara's form. I don't care about your trials. I care about her. To his surprise, the elder's markings pulsed with what appeared to be approval. And that, Jack Harmon, may be the most important test of all. Jack hadn't left Nellara's side for 3 cycles of the regeneration pod. The luminescent fluid had gradually restored her golden-orange complexion, her markings regaining their vibrant pulse. When her eyes finally opened, the relief that flooded through him was overwhelming. You stayed, she murmured, her voice slightly raspy. Of course I stayed, Jack replied, helping her as the pod drained and she stepped out, wrapped in a shimmering robe that clung to her damp skin. The eldest Australian entered the medical chamber, her ancient eyes appraising them both. The council has deliberated on your situation, Jack Harmon. Jack straightened, still supporting Nelara with one arm. And your actions during the sabotage have satisfied the requirements of the second trial. Why, more than satisfied them. The elders' markings pulsed with what Jack now recognized as approval. You prioritize the welfare of an Australian and our settlement over personal achievement. This is the essence of what the trial of Ascension tests. Nellara's hand found Jack's, her fingers intertwining with his in a gesture that sent warmth cascading through his body. However, the elder continued, Krell's faction grows restless. They claim that without completing the traditional third trial, no human can truly be deemed worthy of Australian companionship. Jack felt Nellara tense beside him. What exactly is this third trial? The elder and Nylara exchanged a glance laden with meaning. The bonding, Nylara explained, her markings shifting to a deeper hue that Jack hadn't seen before. It tests compatibility between potential mates on all levels. Physical, mental, spiritual. Mates, Jack repeated, the implications sending his pulse racing. The reward I promised, Nellara said softly, her purple ringed eyes holding his. Among my people, when one saves another's life, they earn the right to attempt a permanent bond. It's more than what humans would call marriage. It's a joining of essence. Jack's mind reeled with this revelation. And this is what you meant when you told me to come back as a man? Yes, she admitted. A boy couldn't handle the bonding. It requires complete maturity, complete openness. The elder cleared her throat. Traditionally, the bonding is conducted privately, but given the unprecedented nature of this union, the council requires witnesses to validate its authenticity. Witnesses? Jack asked, suddenly uncomfortable. Not for the physical aspects, Nelara clarified quickly. Her markings pulsing in what Jack now recognized as the Australian equivalent of a blush. Only for the ceremonial elements and the final confirmation of compatibility. The elder nodded. The ceremony will commence at midnight. I suggest you both prepare yourselves. With that, she departed, leaving them alone. Nelara moved to a window overlooking the settlement, her silvery hair catching the light of the setting suns. You can still decline, Jack. No one would think less of you. He joined her at the window, studying her profile. Is that what you want? For me to decline? No, she answered without hesitation, turning to face him. But you should understand what you're agreeing to. The bonding isn't temporary. It's a lifelong connection that transcends physical distance. Our essences would be intertwined. Jack reached out, his fingers tracing the intricate markings on her arm. They pulsed beneath his touch, responding to him in a way that made her breath catch. Tell me something, he said, his voice low. That day 10 years ago, when you kissed my cheek and told me to come back, did you know then what you were offering? Nilara's eyes softened. I knew you were special. Different from any human I'd encountered. The way you charged in to help a stranger with nothing but stones and courage. Her hand rose to his face, fingers tracing the spot where her lips had touched him a decade ago. I didn't plan to offer the bonding, it was instinctive. And now, Jack asked, acutely aware of her proximity, of the subtle scent of her skin that had haunted his dreams for years. Now I'm certain, she whispered. The question is, are you? Instead of answering with words, Jack leaned in, closing the distance between them. Their lips met, and the contact sent a surge of sensation unlike anything he'd experienced. Her markings flared brilliantly, illuminating the dim chamber as her body melded against his. When they finally parted, both breathless, Nilara's eyes were wide with wonder. That was unexpected. Bad unexpected? Jack asked, suddenly concerned. No, she laughed, the sound like musical chimes. Among Australians, the first kiss is usually less intense. Your human passion is quite remarkable. Jack grinned. And that's just a preview.
Here's a secret tip hackers don't want you to know about. With this app called Malware Bytes, your phone...
That's just a preview. Her markings pulsed rapidly. Then I look forward to the full experience. A knock at the door interrupted them. An Australian attendant entered, bowing respectfully. Commander Nilara, the Council requests your presence for pre-ceremony preparations. The human must also prepare separately, as tradition dictates. As Nilara moved to follow the attendant, she paused, turning back to Jack. Tonight, you'll discover exactly why I asked you to return as a man, she promised, her voice carrying a sensual edge that made his blood rush. And I assure you, Jack Harmon, it will have been worth the wait. The ceremonial chamber was unlike any Jack had seen in the settlement. Ancient symbols adorned walls of polished stone, illuminated by soft blue light that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of his heartbeat. The Australian elders stood in a semicircle, their elaborate robes and glowing markings creating an otherworldly tableau. Jack had been dressed in traditional Australian attire, a form-fitting garment that left his arms bare, with patterns etched into the fabric that mimicked Nilara's markings. The material felt alive against his skin, responding to his body heat and movements. A hush fell over the chamber as Nilara entered. Jack's breath caught in his throat. She wore a ceremonial dress that echoed the one from their first meeting. Black, form-fitting, with strategic openings that revealed her luminescent markings. Her silvery hair flowed freely down her back, adorned with tiny crystals that caught the light. Their eyes met across the chamber, and in that moment, Jack knew with absolute certainty that the decade he'd spent becoming the man standing before her now had been worth every second. Approach the circle of unity, the eldest Australian intoned, her voice resonating through the ceremonial chamber. Jack and Nilara stepped forward together, their fingers intertwined. The floor beneath them began to glow, concentric circles of light spreading outward from where they stood. The bonding has 3 phases, the elder explained. Communion of mind, harmony of spirit, and union of essence. Each must be completed successfully for the bond to form. Jack nodded, trying to appear more confident than he felt. Nilara squeezed his hand reassuringly, her markings pulsing with a rhythm that somehow calmed his racing heart. Communion begins, announced the elder. A soft mist rose from hidden vents, enveloping them in a shimmering cloud. Jack felt a strange tingling sensation at the base of his skull, spreading upward. Open your thoughts, Nilara whispered. Don't resist. Jack closed his eyes, focusing on relaxing the barriers of his mind. Suddenly, he wasn't alone in his consciousness. Nilara's presence flowed into him like warm sunlight, bringing with it flashes of her memories, emotions, and sensations. He saw her childhood in a world with 3 moons, felt her pride when she earned her commander's rank, experienced her shock and intrigue when a young human boy had fearlessly confronted mercenaries to save her. This is incredible, Jack thought, and knew she heard him when her mental presence brightened with pleasure. Your mind is different from an Australian's, her thoughts replied. More compartmentalized, yet remarkably adaptable. Jack felt her curiosity as she explored his memories, his determination during colonial forces training, his loneliness on distant outposts, and most vividly, the decade he'd spent thinking about her, wondering if he'd ever see her again. You truly never forgot, her thoughts whispered, tinged with wonder. How could I? He responded silently. The mist began to dissipate, signaling the end of the first phase. Jack opened his eyes to find Nylara staring at him with newfound understanding. Communion is achieved, declared the elder, genuine surprise in her voice. Few Australian pairs connect so completely on first attempt. Nylara's markings pulsed with what Jack now recognized as pride. Humans are remarkably compatible with us in ways we never imagined. Harmony of spirit begins, the elder announced. The chamber's lighting shifted to a deep indigo. The ceremonial garments they wore began to respond, becoming almost fluid against their skin, the patterns shifting to create matching designs across both their bodies. This phase reveals our essential natures, Nylara explained softly, our truest selves. Jack felt a profound warmth spreading through his chest, radiating outward. To his amazement, his skin began to emit a faint blue glow where the garment touched it, not unlike Nylara's markings. That's not supposed to happen, one of the younger elders whispered, earning a silencing glance from the eldest. Now, Nylara's markings were changing too, shifting from their usual patterns into new configurations that somehow mirrored the energy emanating from Jack. Their glows began to synchronize, pulsing in perfect harmony. Your spirit resonates with mine, Nylara breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. The garment is responding to your essence as if you were Australian. Jack felt it too, a sense of rightness, of completion. Maybe our differences aren't as significant as our similarities. The eldest Australian stepped forward, examining the phenomenon with ancient eyes. In all my cycles, I've never witnessed this. A human spirit manifesting Australian resonance? Is that bad? Jack asked. On the contrary, the elder replied, it suggests a compatibility beyond our understanding. Harmony is achieved more profoundly than anticipated. The chamber's atmosphere shifted again, the light becoming a warm amber that bathed them in a golden glow. The final phase approaches, the elder announced. Union of essence is traditionally conducted in private, but the initial binding must be witnessed. The other elders formed a circle around them, their hands raised in a ceremonial gesture. This is where it gets interesting, Nylara whispered, her voice carrying a sensual edge that made Jack's pulse quicken. Place your hands upon each other's hearts, instructed the elder. Jack placed his palm against Nylara's chest, feeling the rapid beat of her heart, or hearts, as he discovered during their mental communion that Australians possessed a dual cardiovascular system.
Chill's strategy game recommendation. In the tower, you stand alone against waves of enemies.
Cardiovascular system. She mirrored his action, her touch sending waves of pleasure through his body. Now we begin the vision quest, the elder continued. You will see potential futures, both challenges and triumphs that await your union. The chamber seemed to dissolve around them. Jack found himself and Nylara standing in a series of rapidly shifting scenes, some on Earth, others on alien worlds. In each vision, they faced different situations together, navigating cultural misunderstandings among humans who stared at their unconventional pairing. Nylara laughing as Jack attempted to explain baseball. Jack standing proudly beside her as she addressed an interspecies council. One vision showed them facing discrimination from both sides, yet standing resilient together. Another revealed them building a home that blended both their culture. In yet another, they stood watching dual suns set over a landscape where human and Australian children played together. Our potential futures, Nylara's voice echoed in his mind. Some challenging, some beautiful. All worth facing together, Jack responded. The visions coalesced into a single powerful image. The two of them, older but still vibrant, surrounded by what appeared to be a family that bridged both their species. The sense of fulfillment and joy emanating from this vision was overwhelming. Gradually, the ceremonial chamber rematerialized around them. The elders were watching with expressions ranging from awe to disbelief. The vision quest has never manifested so clearly, the eldest said, her voice hushed. The compatibility is undeniable. Nilara's markings were glowing more brilliantly than Jack had ever seen, pulsing in perfect synchronization with the energy emanating from his own body. The public portion of the ceremony is complete, the elder announced. The final union must now be completed in private, as tradition demands. As the elders filed out of the chamber, Nilara turned to Jack. Her purple ringed eyes filled with an intensity that made his breath catch. Now, she said softly, taking his hand and leading him toward a doorway that had appeared in the chamber wall. You discovered the true reward I promised all those years ago. Jack followed, his heart racing with anticipation. The doorway led to a private sanctuary adorned with soft illumination that responded to their presence, brightening and dimming in harmony with their emotions. 10 years ago, Nilara said, turning to face him, I saw potential in a brave boy. Today, I see fulfillment in the man you've become. Her fingers traced the contours of his face with exquisite tenderness. Are you ready to complete what we've begun? Jack drew her closer, feeling the remarkable heat of her golden orange skin against his. I've been ready since the moment I returned to this planet. As their lips met, the markings on Nilara's skin flared brilliantly, casting the sanctuary in a radiant glow that matched the intensity of the connection forming between them. A connection that transcended physical attraction, cultural differences, and even the vast distances between their worlds. Jack awoke to the gentle touch of dual sun streaming through the sanctuary's windows. And Nilara lay beside him, her golden orange skin glowing in the morning light, silvery hair cascading across the pillows. Her markings pulsed with a peaceful rhythm that somehow matched his own heartbeat. The night had been transcendent. Their union had been unlike anything Jack could have imagined. A melding not just of bodies, but of essences, as if they had temporarily become a single being while still retaining their individual selves. As if sensing his thoughts, Nilara's eyes opened, their purple rings brightening at the sight of him. I can feel you, she murmured, placing her hand over his heart. Not just physically. I can sense your emotions, your presence. Jack realized he felt it too, a constant awareness of her that went beyond the physical. Is this normal for Australian bondings? To an extent, she replied, sitting up, but this is more intense. The elders warned me it might be different with a human, but no one anticipated this level of connection. She closed her eyes in concentration, then smiled. I can sense you'd like some morning refreshment, specifically coffee? A strange human beverage I've never tasted. Jack laughed. That's impressive and slightly unnerving. The bond will stabilize, she assured him, rising with fluid grace. We'll learn to control how much we share. As Nilara moved to the refreshment alcove, Jack noticed something extraordinary. Where his hand brushed against his own arm, a faint glow appeared, similar to Australian markings, but uniquely his own. Nilara, he called, examining the phenomenon. I think something's happening to me. She returned quickly, her eyes widening at the sight. The resonance from the ceremony is manifesting physically. Her fingers traced the faint patterns on his skin, sending pleasant shivers through his body. This is unprecedented. A sudden commotion outside interrupted their discovery. Shouts and the sound of energy weapons discharging echoed through the sanctuary. Krell! Nilara hissed, instantly alert. She moved to a hidden panel, retrieving 2 plasma pistols, tossing one to Jack. They dressed quickly, the ceremonial garments adapting to become more practical. Jack felt a surge of protective instinct that wasn't entirely his own. Nilara's emotions flowing through their bond. He's escaped custody, she explained, checking her weapon. I can sense his rage. He's coming for us. Jack concentrated, surprised to find he could indeed feel a hostile presence approaching. How is this possible? I shouldn't be able to sense him. Our bond, Nalara replied. You're accessing my abilities as I'm accessing yours. Your military tactical thinking is currently helping me formulate a defense strategy. Jack grinned despite the danger. That's actually pretty damn useful. The sanctuary door burst open. Krell stood there, flanked by 3 supporters, all armed with Australian weapons. Australian weapons. The abomination must end, Krell snarled. This human corrupts our sacred traditions. Jack stepped forward, his newly manifested markings glowing with intensity. Your traditions allowed me to attempt the trials. I passed them fairly. Impossible, Krell raised his weapon. No human could truly bond with an Australian. Yet here we stand, Nalara replied calmly, her markings pulsing in perfect synchronization with Jack's, united in ways you cannot comprehend. Jack felt a surge of inspiration through their bond. Without speaking, he knew what Nalara was suggesting. They raised their hands simultaneously, their markings flaring with shared energy. A wave of force erupted from their combined effort, disarming Krell and his supporters without harming them. The rebels stood frozen, astonished by the display of power. Impossible, Krell whispered. Security forces arrived, led by the eldest Australian. She surveyed the scene with ancient, knowing eyes. The prophecy, she murmured, the joining of stars. It was never meant to be metaphorical. What prophecy? Jack asked. An ancient text that speaks of 2 beings from different stars, whose union would bridge worlds and herald a new era of understanding. The elder approached them, examining their synchronized markings with wonder. For generations, we assumed it referred to Australian houses. We never considered it might mean different species entirely. Krell was taken into custody, his expression one of confused defeat rather than hatred. As he was led away, Jack sensed the shift in the atmosphere. The other Australians were looking at him and Nalara with new respect, even reverence. This changes everything, the elder said. Both our worlds must be informed of what has occurred here. 3 months later, Jack stood beside Nalara on the observation deck of an Earth orbital station. Below them, the blue-green planet rotated serenely, while behind them, representatives from both human and Australian governments prepared for the formal signing of the first Interspecies Alliance Treaty. They're calling us the bridge between stars, Jack remarked, showing Nalara the news headline on his datapad. Apparently, we're responsible for ushering in a new era of interspecies cooperation. Nalara laughed, the sound still like musical chimes to his ears. All because a 14-year-old boy threw stones at mercenaries. And because a beautiful alien girl promised him a reward worth waiting for. Jack pulled her close, his markings, now permanent and distinctive, glowing in response to her proximity. The past months had been a whirlwind of diplomatic meetings, scientific examinations, and cultural exchanges. Their unprecedented bond had become the foundation for understanding between humans and Australians. Scientists were fascinated by the physiological changes in Jack, the manifestation of Australian-like markings and abilities, while cultural experts from both worlds studied their relationship as a model for interspecies harmony. Admiral Chen is staring at us again, Nalara whispered, amusement coloring her thoughts as they flowed through their bond. He still can't believe a colonial forces soldier managed to become an interstellar diplomat overnight. Former colonial forces, Jack corrected. My new position as interspecies liaison apparently requires my full attention. As does your position as my bondmate, Nalara added, her fingers intertwining with his. A diplomatic aide approached, clearing his throat. They're ready for you both. The ceremony is about to begin. As they turned to join the gathering, Jack paused, looking once more at Earth below and the stars beyond. Where will we make our home? He asked, the question that had been on both their minds. Nalara smiled, her purple ringed eyes holding his. Remember our vision during the bonding? That house on the cliff overlooking both ocean and desert? On the colony world at Alpha Centauri, Jack nodded, where both suns and Earth can be seen in the sky. A perfect bridge between our worlds, she agreed, just like us. The treaty signing proceeded with all the pomp and circumstance befitting such a historic occasion. But for Jack, the true miracle wasn't the political alliance. Australian comfort. Do you remember what I said to you that very first day? Nylar asked, turning to face him. When you were just a boy who'd thrown stones at mercenaries? Come back when you become a man, Jack recited, the memory still vivid after all these years. The reward will be worth it. Her markings pulsed with intensity as she moved closer. I've been thinking about that promise lately. Oh? Jack's own markings responded, creating patterns of light that danced across his skin. Oh, I thought we'd thoroughly explored that reward. That's the wonderful thing about rewards, Nilara whispered, her fingers working at the fastenings of his shirt with practiced ease. The best ones keep giving. Through their bond, Jack felt her playful mood mingled with genuine emotion, love, desire, and a deep appreciation for the journey that had brought them together across the stars. I never imagined, she continued, when I kissed the cheek of that brave, foolish boy, that the man he would become would change not just my life, but the relationship between our entire species. Nora Jack pulled her closer, their markings aligning and flaring with shared passion. And I never imagined that the mysterious alien girl with the tight black dress would turn out to be the other half of my soul. Half? Nilara teased, her hands exploring the contours of his chest where his newly acquired markings glowed brightest. I'd say I'm at least 60%. 55, Jack countered with a grin, his fingers finding the sensitive patterns along her spine that always made her markings pulse with pleasure. Their playful negotiation continued as they moved toward the bedroom, their bond amplifying every touch, every sensation, creating an experience that transcended both human and Australian understanding of intimacy. Later, as they lay entwined, their markings still glowing with the after effects of their shared passion, Nilara traced lazy patterns on Jack's chest. Worth coming back for? She asked, echoing the question she'd posed a year earlier during their bonding. Jack looked at this extraordinary being who had waited for him to grow into the man worthy of her, who had faced prejudice and danger to forge a bond unprecedented in either of their cultures, who continued to surprise and delight him with each passing day. Worth crossing the stars for, he replied, pulling her close as their markings aligned once more, illuminating the room with the physical manifestation of a connection that had begun with a boy's courage, a girl's promise, and a reward that continued to unfold in ways neither could have imagined.
They're coming for me.
Who's coming, Quinn? What's going on?
Quinn.
Does the bulge between my legs intrigue you, human? Is that why you're acting strange? Lieutenant Commander Marcus Ray couldn't focus on the trade agreement. Not with that distraction right across the table. The Zilarian ambassador sat with perfect posture, one leg crossed over the other, causing her khaki shorts to ride up just enough to reveal. Marcus forced his eyes back to the data pad. The Zilarian Earth trade agreement was critical. Earth needed their advanced propulsion technology, and the Zilarians wanted Earth's agricultural techniques. Simple enough, except nothing felt simple with Ambassador Thalia watching him with those piercing silver eyes. Commander Ray, you haven't commented on the proposed exchange rates. Admiral Harrington's voice cut through Marcus's distraction. I believe they are acceptable, Marcus managed clearing his throat, though I'd suggest a phased implementation over 3 Earth years rather than immediate adoption. He risked another glance at Thalia. The orange-skinned alien smiled, her freckles like scattered stars across her face, seeming to shimmer under the conference room lights. When she uncrossed her legs to lean forward, Marcus caught another glimpse of what had been distracting him all morning. There was definitely something there. A bulge. Where human women most certainly didn't have bulges. Shit. Had he missed something in the briefing? Was Thalia male? Or something else entirely? Human Zilarian...
It's gone up even more.
Human and Australian comfort. Do you remember what I said to you that very first day? Nylar asked, turning to face him. When you were just a boy who'd thrown stones at mercenaries? Come back when you become a man, Jack recited, the memory still vivid after all these years. The reward will be worth it. Her markings pulsed with intensity as she moved closer. I've been thinking about that promise lately. Oh? Jack's own markings responded, creating patterns of light that danced across his skin. Oh, I thought we'd thoroughly explored that reward. That's the wonderful thing about rewards, Nilara whispered, her fingers working at the fastenings of his shirt with practiced ease. The best ones keep giving. Through their bond, Jack felt her playful mood mingled with genuine emotion, love, desire, and a deep appreciation for the journey that had brought them together across the stars. I never imagined, she continued, when I kissed the cheek of that brave, foolish boy, that the man he would become would change not just my life, but the relationship between our entire species. Jack pulled her closer, their markings aligning and flaring with shared passion. And I never imagined that the mysterious alien girl with the tight black dress would turn out to be the other half of my soul. Half? Nilara teased, her hands exploring the contours of his chest where his newly acquired markings glowed brightest. I'd say I'm at least 60%. 55, Jack countered with a grin, his fingers finding the sensitive patterns along her spine that always made her markings pulse with pleasure. Their playful negotiation continued as they moved toward the bedroom, their bond amplifying every touch, every sensation, creating an experience that transcended both human and Australian understanding of intimacy. Later, as they lay entwined, their markings still glowing with the after effects of their shared passion, Nilara traced lazy patterns on Jack's chest. Worth coming back for? She asked, echoing the question she'd posed a year earlier during their bonding. Jack looked at this extraordinary being who had waited for him to grow into the man worthy of her, who had faced prejudice and danger to forge a bond unprecedented in either of their cultures, who continued to surprise and delight him with each passing day. Worth crossing the stars for, he replied, pulling her close as their markings aligned once more, illuminating the room with the physical manifestation of a connection that had begun with a boy's courage, a girl's promise, and a reward that continued to unfold in ways neither could have imagined.
They're coming for me.
Who's coming, Quinn? What's going on?
Quinn.
Does the bulge between my legs intrigue you, human? Is that why you're acting strange? Lieutenant Commander Marcus Ray couldn't focus on the trade agreement. Not with that distraction right across the table. The Zilarian ambassador sat with perfect posture, one leg crossed over the other, causing her khaki shorts to ride up just enough to reveal. Marcus forced his eyes back to the datapad. The Zilarian Earth trade agreement was critical. Earth needed their advanced propulsion technology, and the Zilarians wanted Earth's agricultural techniques. Simple enough, except nothing felt simple with Ambassador Thalia watching him with those piercing silver eyes. Commander Ray, you haven't commented on the proposed exchange rates. Admiral Harrington's voice cut through Marcus's distraction. I believe they are acceptable, Marcus managed clearing his throat, though I'd suggest a phased implementation over 3 Earth years rather than immediate adoption. He risked another glance at Thalia. The orange-skinned alien smiled, her freckles like scattered stars across her face, seeming to shimmer under the conference room lights. When she uncrossed her legs to lean forward, Marcus caught another glimpse of what had been distracting him all morning. There was definitely something there. A bulge. Where human women most certainly didn't have bulges. Shit. Had he missed something in the briefing? Was Thalia male? Or something else entirely? Human Zilarian, he replied, pulling her close as their markings aligned once more, illuminating the room with the physical manifestation of a connection that had begun with a boy's courage, a girl's promise, and a reward that continued to unfold in ways neither could have imagined.
They're coming for me.
Who's coming, Quinn? What's going on?
Quinn.
Does the bulge between my legs intrigue you, human? Is that why you're acting strange? Lieutenant Commander Marcus Ray couldn't focus on the trade agreement. Not with that distraction right across the table. The Zilarian ambassador sat with perfect posture, one leg crossed over the other, causing her khaki shorts to ride up just enough to reveal. Marcus forced his eyes back to the datapad. The Zilarian Earth trade agreement was critical. Earth needed their advanced propulsion technology, and the Zilarians wanted Earth's agricultural techniques. Simple enough, except nothing felt simple with Ambassador Thalia watching him with those piercing silver eyes. Commander Ray, you haven't commented on the proposed exchange rates. Admiral Harrington's voice cut through Marcus's distraction. I believe they are acceptable, Marcus managed clearing his throat. Though I'd suggest a phased implementation over 3 Earth years rather than immediate adoption. He risked another glance at Thalia. The orange-skinned alien smiled, her freckles like scattered stars across her face, seeming to shimmer under the conference room lights. When she uncrossed her legs to lean forward, Marcus caught another glimpse of what had been distracting him all morning. There was definitely something there. A bulge. Where human women most certainly didn't have bulges. Shit. Had he missed something in the briefing? Was Thalia male? Or something else entirely? Human-Zalarian relations were still new. Barely 2 years since first contact. The diplomatic corps had provided cultural briefings, but anatomy hadn't been covered in detail. Perhaps Thalia's melodic voice drew him back to the present. We should consider Commander Ray's suggestion. A phased approach would allow both our peoples to adjust to the new technologies. Her eyes locked with his, a knowing glint in them that made his face heat. Excellent, Admiral Harrington nodded. We'll break for lunch and reconvene in 2 hours to finalize the details. As the room cleared, Marcus gathered his notes, hoping to escape before Commander Ray. Thalia's voice, closer than expected, made him jump. You seem distracted today. Is something troubling you about our agreement? Up close, her scent was intoxicating, something like cinnamon and sea salt. Her silvery white hair cascaded over one shoulder, and her form-fitting top accentuated curves that were remarkably human-like, except for that one detail. Not at all, Ambassador, just considering all angles of the agreement. All angles? Her lips quirked upward. How thorough of you. Perhaps we could discuss these angles over lunch, privately? Before Marcus could formulate a response that wouldn't sound like diplomatic suicide, Admiral Harrington appeared beside them. Ray, a moment before you go. Thalia inclined her head. I'll await you in the embassy dining room, Commander. As she walked away, Marcus couldn't help but notice the graceful sway of her hips. Ray, Harrington's voice dropped to a whisper. Stop staring at the ambassador's ass and get your head in the game. This agreement is too important for you to be distracted by interspecies hormones. Sir, save it. I don't care if she's got 3 heads or tentacles. She's an ambassador, not a shore-leave fling. Yes, sir. Understood. As Harrington walked away, Marcus exhaled slowly. The Admiral had misinterpreted his distraction, but he wasn't about to correct him. The embassy dining room was nearly empty when Marcus arrived. Thalia sat alone at a corner table, a glass of something purple before her. Commander, she gestured to the seat across from her. I took the liberty of ordering you water. I understand humans require significant hydration. Thank you, Ambassador. He sat, trying to keep his eyes firmly on her face. Please, when we're alone, call me Thalia. Then I'm Marcus. She smiled, revealing teeth that were slightly sharper than human ones. Marcus, a strong name from your Roman mythology, yes? The War Gods Month. You've studied our culture. Of course, understanding is the foundation of diplomacy. She took a sip of her purple drink. Just as observation is the beginning of understanding.
Eén kabel voor alles. En hij laat 5 keer sneller dan wat je nu gebruikt. Maak kennis met de Linkscharge 4-in-1 USB-kabel.
Understanding. Her eyes held his, challenging. I've noticed you observing me quite intently today, Marcus. Particularly certain aspects of my physiology. His mouth went dry. Ambassador Thalia, I apologize if I've been inappropriate. She laughed, a sound like wind chimes. No need for apologies. Curiosity is natural, especially when encountering something unfamiliar. She leaned forward. You're wondering about the bulge between my legs, aren't you? Marcus nearly choked on his water. Does it intrigue you? Is that why you're acting strange? I'm sorry, he managed. I didn't mean to stare. I just wasn't sure if I'd missed something important in our briefings about Zalarian biology. Thalia's expression softened. Your diplomatic corps has been thorough, but perhaps not comprehensive. Female Zalarians carry our reproductive organs in an external protective pouch. It's quite different from human females, but I assure you I am female by both our species definitions. Relief washed over him. followed immediately by embarrassment. I see. Thank you for explaining. I apologize for my ignorance. Never apologize for seeking knowledge, Marcus. Her hand moved across the table, fingers brushing his. In fact, I find your curiosity refreshing. Most humans I've met pretend not to notice our differences. Her touch sent an unexpected jolt through him. Well, I'm a tactical officer, not a diplomat. Observation is part of my training. And what else have you observed about me? Her voice dropped lower. Before he could answer, his commune had buzzed. Ray here. Commander, Admiral Harrington's voice crackled. We need you in the security office. Now. Marcus stood, giving Thalia an apologetic look. Duty calls. I'll see you at the afternoon session. As he walked away, Thalia called after him. I look forward to continuing our cultural exchange, Commander. Something in her tone made him wonder if they were still talking about diplomacy at all. A Zalarian bonding ceremony? Marcus adjusted the collar of his dress uniform as he stood outside Thalia's quarters that evening. I'm not sure what I was expecting when you invited me, but it wasn't this. Thalia's door slid open, revealing her in a flowing silver garment that complemented her orange skin and star-like freckles. A delicate chain with glowing blue stones adorned her neck. Having second thoughts, Commander? Her silver eyes sparkled with amusement. Not at all. Just wondering if I'm dressed appropriately for a cultural ritual I know nothing about. She stepped aside to let him enter. Her quarters were transformed. Soft blue lights created a twilight atmosphere, and the air was fragrant with something like jasmine and cedar. Your uniform is perfect, she said, circling him slowly. The ceremony honors warriors who protect their people. You qualify. Marcus watched her move, graceful as a dancer. And what exactly does this ceremony entail? Sharing. She gestured to a low table set with strange fruits and 2 crystal glasses filled with iridescent liquid. Knowledge, stories, essence. Essence? Her lips curved. Not what you're thinking, Commander, though your face is quite expressive when you blush. Marcus cleared his throat. I wasn't... You were. She motioned him to sit.
In 1000 meter verkeersopstelling A1 voor 15 minuten wegens vastgelopen verkeer.
As he settled onto the cushion, Thalia knelt across from him, the silver fabric pooling around her. She raised her glass. To understanding between worlds, Marcus mirrored her gesture. To understanding. The liquid tasted like honey and starlight, warming his throat and spreading through his chest. This is incredible wine, he said, examining the glass. Nectar of the luminous bloom. It opens the mind to new perspectives. She leaned forward. Essential for true cultural exchange. Is this going to get me court-martialed? He asked, only half joking. It's not intoxicating by human standards, just enhancing. As if to prove her point, the freckles across her skin seemed to glow faintly, creating constellations he hadn't noticed before. Your freckles, they're luminescent. Yes, they respond to emotion and energy. She touched one on her wrist. Each pattern tells a story. What story are they telling now? Her eyes met his. Curiosity, anticipation. The air between them seemed to thicken. In Zalarian culture, she continued, physical differences aren't hidden or shameful. They're celebrated. She gestured to her body. Our reproductive pouch, for instance, it's considered a mark of feminine power. The ability to protect new life before it even begins. On Earth, we're more private about such things. Yes, I've noticed. Her fingers traced patterns on the table's surface. Your species hides much of what makes you beautiful. Your vulnerabilities, your desires. Marcus took another sip of the nectar. Maybe we're just cautious or afraid. She tilted her head. What are you afraid of, Marcus Ray? The use of his full name sent a shiver through him. Diplomatic incidents, mostly. She laughed, the sound like music. A safe answer. The bonding ceremony requires more honesty than that. What would an honest answer be? That you're drawn to me despite, or perhaps because of our differences. That you've wondered what it would be like to touch alien skin. That you're curious about how Zalarians express intimacy. His pulse quickened. That would be presumptuous.
I'm the developer of the game, The Tower. I wanted to make a tower defense game that had nearly infinite number of upgrades.
His pulse quickened. That would be presumptuous. Would it? She reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. The nectar reveals truth in auras. Yours is quite revealing. The contacts sent electricity through his veins. What does it reveal? Desire, conflict, honor. Her thumb traced circles on his palm. Your species values restraint. Mine values honesty. Perhaps we can find middle ground. Marcus found himself leaning closer. What does the rest of this ceremony involve? Traditionally, the sharing of life energy through physical connection. Her free hand moved to the chain at her neck. The stones record the harmony between participants. Physical connection, not necessarily what humans call sex, though that can be part of it. The stones at her neck pulse brighter. Our bodies can connect in many ways. The goal is resonance, finding the frequency where two beings vibrate in harmony. The nectar was definitely affecting him now. Her words painted vivid images in his mind. And if we were to attempt this ceremony, Talia's freckles glowed brighter. Then we would explore each other's differences with respect and curiosity. Learn what pleases, what resonates. She rose fluidly and moved around the table, kneeling beside him. Up close, her scent was intoxicating. May I? She asked, hand hovering near his face. At his nod, she traced her fingers along his jawline, exploring the texture of his stubble. Fascinating, she murmured. We don't grow hair this way. Emboldened, Marcus reached up to touch a strand of her silvery hair. And this? Not hair as you understand it. Sensory filaments. They detect changes in energy fields. She leaned into his touch. They're quite sensitive. His fingers moved to her freckled shoulder. You know, her skin was warmer than human skin, with a texture like velvet. Your touch feels different from a Zilarian's, she said softly. Cooler, firmer. Good different or bad different? Just different. Her hand moved to rest over his heart. Your rhythm is faster than ours. 2 chambers instead of 3. As her palm pressed against his chest, Marcus felt a strange resonance, as if her touch was reaching inside him. What are you doing? He whispered. Feeling your life force. Her eyes half closed. Humans burn so brightly, so quickly. Without thinking, he mirrored her gesture, placing his hand over where he assumed her heart would be. Instead of a heartbeat, he felt a humming vibration. Her eyes opened, surprise evident. You're a quick study, Commander. I have an excellent teacher, Ambassador. The stones at her neck pulsed in time with the vibration under his palm. Her face moved closer to his, her breath mingling with his own. The ceremony traditionally continues in more private ways, she whispered, if you were willing to explore further. Marcus knew he stood at a crossroads, not just personally, but perhaps diplomatically as well. Yeah, I'm willing, he said, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. Show me. What began as cultural exploration quickly evolved into something more primal. The Zilarian bonding ceremony, with its consciousness expanding nectar and emphasis on physical connection, dissolved the barriers between them. Hours later, Marcus lay beside Thalia on her bed, both breathing heavily, their bodies cooling in the aftermath of shared passion. The blue stones on her necklace pulsed with a steady, satisfied rhythm. That was... Marcus searched for words. Unexpected? Thalia supplied, her freckles glowing with a new pattern, one he hadn't seen before. Incredible, he corrected. I didn't know our species would be so... compatible. She turned to face him, tracing a finger along his chest. The universe has a sense of humor. 2 species from different corners of the galaxy, evolved under different suns, yet able to find pleasure together. More than pleasure, Marcus said softly. Connection. Thalia's smile faded slightly as she sat up, pressing a hand to her abdomen. Yes, perhaps more connection than I anticipated. Are you all right? I'm experiencing sensations I wasn't prepared for. Her brow furrowed. My reproductive pouch is reacting. Marcus propped himself up on his elbow. Reacting how? It's preparing for fertilization. She looked at him with a mixture of wonder and concern. This shouldn't be possible between our species. What? Marcus sat up fully now. You mean you could get pregnant? No, not exactly. She pressed both hands to the bulge between her legs, the very feature that had first caught his attention and sparked this entire adventure. Zalarian reproduction is complex. We don't conceive as humans do. The pouch beneath her hands pulsed visibly, causing her to gasp. Thalia, what's happening? Alarm crept into his voice. My body is responding to yours in ways I didn't think possible. Her silver eyes widened. The genetic compatibility sensors in my pouch have activated. They're analyzing your DNA. Marcus reached for his uniform pants. Should I call the medical team? No. She caught his wrist. This is private. Sacred. Her expression softened. And not dangerous. Just unprecedented. She guided his hand to her pouch. Through the thin fabric of her undergarment, he could feel warmth and a rhythmic pulsing. In Zalarian reproduction, the female's pouch contains specialized cells that analyze a potential mate's genetic material. If compatible, these cells create a genetic template, a blueprint for potential offspring.
Hier zie je de grafiek van een aantal tests. Denk jij dat de prijs omhoog of omlaag gaat? Het antwoord ging een aantal procent. Deze prijs swing plaats binnen 30 minuten. En ondanks dat deze beweging maar een paar procent is, hebben mijn studenten en ik hier meer dan 1000 euro. En ook jij kan gebruik maken van deze beweging. Want het is niet zo ingewikkeld om te herkennen.
A blueprint for potential offspring. And my genetic material triggered this process? Marcus asked, fascinated despite his concern. Yes, which should be impossible. Our DNA structures are completely different. Her freckles shifted into new patterns as she spoke. Yet something in you resonated with my reproductive system. Is it painful? Number intense, but not painful. She closed her eyes briefly. It feels like potential, possibility. Marcus watched as the glow from her freckles seemed to flow downward, concentrating around her reproductive pouch. What happens now? Normally, this would be the first stage of a lengthy reproductive process. The template would be stored until I chose to activate it, combining it with another compatible template to create new life. And with me? I don't know. Her voice held wonder rather than fear. And this is uncharted territory. Cross-species reproduction isn't documented between humans and Zalarians. Marcus felt a strange mix of pride and terror. Should we be concerned? No. She placed her hand over his. My body won't proceed further without conscious activation. The template will simply be stored. So you're saying, Marcus tried to process this information, part of me is now preserved inside you? As potential? Yes, a genetic echo, a possibility. Her eyes met his. Does that disturb you? He considered this. Actually, it's strangely flattering. Though Admiral Harrington might have different thoughts about my DNA being stored in an alien reproductive system. Thalia laughed, the tension breaking. I don't plan to include it in my diplomatic report. As her laughter subsided, she grew more serious. Marcus, there's something else you should know about this process. What's that? The compatibility analysis works both ways. My body wouldn't respond this way unless there was something uniquely harmonious between us. Her freckles pulsed brighter. Not just physically, but energetically. Our life forces resonate. Meaning this wasn't just casual pleasure between diplomats. Her hand caressed his face. My species doesn't form reproductive bonds easily or lightly. The fact that my body responded to you this way suggests something deeper. Marcus felt a weight settle on him. Not unpleasant, but significant. I'm not sure I understand all the implications. Neither do I fully. She smiled. But I know enough to recognize that what happened between us is rare and precious. My people would consider us bonded now. Bonded, as in joined, connected. What humans might call married, though that's an imperfect translation. Marcus blinked. That's fast. By human standards, perhaps. She tilted her head. Does this make you uncomfortable? He considered the question carefully. Not uncomfortable, just processing. On Earth, these things usually happen in a different order. Tell me. Well, typically there's dating, getting to know each other, meeting families, planning a future together. Then marriage, then reproduction considerations. Thalia nodded. We Zalarians believe the body's wisdom precedes the mind's deliberations. If two beings are truly compatible, their bodies recognize it before their conscious minds can analyze all the variables. Marcus found himself smiling. There's something refreshingly honest about that approach. Does this mean you're not planning to flee back to your quarters in panic? Her tone was light, but he sensed genuine concern beneath it. No fleeing. He took her hand. Though I might need some time to adjust to the idea that I'm apparently married to an alien ambassador after one night together. Her freckles glowed with what he was beginning to recognize as happiness. The universe works in mysterious ways, Commander Ray. That it does, Ambassador Thalia. He leaned forward to kiss her, but his comm unit buzzed insistently. Duty calls, he sighed, always at the most inconvenient moments. She touched the still pulsing pouch. We have much more to discuss about this unexpected development. As Marcus dressed, he couldn't help but wonder how a simple case of anatomical curiosity had led to interstellar marriage and genetic bonding in less than 24 hours. And Admiral Harrington was definitely not going to include this in the mission briefing. Marcus's comm unit continued buzzing as he finished dressing. The message displayed made his blood run cold. Ray, Admiral's office. Immediately, trouble. Thalia asked, wrapping herself in a silken robe. Harrington wants to see me. Immediately isn't usually a good sign. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. How do I look? Like a man who's been thoroughly bonded with an alien ambassador. Her freckles pulsed with amusement. Perhaps he'll smooth your collar. As Marcus adjusted his uniform, Thalia's own communication device chimed. Her expression darkened as she read the message. What is it? He asked. The Zalarian High Council has requested an emergency conference. She looked up, concern evident in her silver eyes. Something's happening, Marcus. They shared a brief, intense kiss before duty pulled them in separate directions. Admiral Harrington's face was granite as Marcus entered his office. Lieutenant Commander Ray, he said coldly, would you care to explain why our intelligence division intercepted communications from a Zalarian extremist group mentioning you by name? Marcus blinked. Sir? Harrington activated a holographic display. A message in Zalarian script appeared, with translation below. The human ray has contaminated Ambassador Thalia. The bond must be severed. Purity will prevail. What the hell is this? Marcus asked. That's what I'd like to know. Harrington's eyes narrowed. What exactly is your relationship with Ambassador Thalia? Marcus stood at attention, mind racing. Sir, the ambassador and I have been engaging in cultural exchange to facilitate better understanding between our species. Cultural exchange. Harrington's voice dripped with skepticism. And does this exchange explain why you're mentioned in communications from the Purity Vanguard, a radical faction opposed to Zalarian human relations? I wasn't aware of any such faction, sir. Well, they're aware of you. Harrington stood, hands clasped behind his back. Commander Ray, I'm ordering you to return to Earth immediately. The USS Horizon departs in 3 hours. Sir? Marcus felt like he'd been punched. With respect, we're in the middle of critical negotiations. Negotiations that are now compromised by whatever cultural exchange you've been conducting with the ambassador. Harrington's voice softened slightly. This isn't just about protocol, Ray. These extremists are dangerous. Your presence here puts both the mission and an Ambassador Thalia at risk. I can't just leave her, Marcus said before he could stop himself. Harrington's eyebrows rose. Can't leave her? What exactly happened between you two? Marcus hesitated, then decided on honesty. Sir, Ambassador Thalia and I have formed a connection that, in Zalarian culture, constitutes a bond similar to marriage. Marriage? Harrington exploded. In less than 48 hours? Have you lost your mind? It wasn't planned, sir. It's a biological response that... Spare me the details. Harrington pinched the bridge of his nose. This is exactly why we have protocols about fraternization with alien species. Sir, sending me away won't solve the problem. If these extremists know about us, they'll target Thalia whether I'm here or not. Harrington studied him for a long moment. You care for her? Yes, sir. Enough to disobey a direct order? Marcus straightened. I hope it won't come to that, sir. A tense silence filled the room before Harrington sighed. You have 3 hours to get your affairs in order. The Horizon leaves at 1800 hours. Dismissed. Marcus found Thalia in the embassy's secure communication chamber, her face grim as she disconnected from her call with the High Council. They know, she said without preamble. About us. About the bond. Harrington knows too. He's ordering me back to Earth. Marcus took her hands. There's a radical group called the Purity Vanguard. I know them. Her freckles darkened with concern. They believe Solarians should remain genetically isolated from other species. They consider cross-species bonding a form of contamination. How could they know about us so quickly? Thalia touched her still pulsing reproductive pouch. The bonding creates subtle biochemical changes. Another Zolarian would detect them immediately. Harrington thinks I should leave for your safety. Her eyes flashed. And abandon our bond? That's the human solution? It's not my solution, Marcus said firmly. I won't leave you to face this alone. Relief washed over her features. The High Council has ordered me to return to Zalaria immediately as well. They claim it's for my protection, but I suspect they want to study our bond. This kind of compatibility is unprecedented. Marcus paced the small room. So our respective governments both want to separate us. It appears so. She stepped closer to him. What do you want, Marcus? To stay with you. The answer came without hesitation. But I also have a duty to Earth, as I have to Zalaria. Her fingers traced his jawline. Perhaps there's a third option. I'm listening. We could request joint protective custody, make the case that separating us could destabilize the bond, with unknown consequences for both our species. Marcus grinned. Diplomatic blackmail? Strategic negotiation, she corrected, her freckles pulsing with mischief. Both our governments want this treaty. Neither will risk a diplomatic incident. It might work, Fornisha, Marcus admitted, but the Purity Vanguard won't care about diplomacy. No, she agreed, but they'll find it harder to target us if we're surrounded by both human and Zalarian security. Marcus pulled her close, inhaling her cinnamon sea salt scent. I should have known that staring at your reproductive pouch would lead to interstellar intrigue. She laughed against his chest. Does it still intrigue you, human male? Everything about you intrigues me. His hands traced the curve of her back. Especially how quickly you've turned my life upside down. A talent of mine. She kissed him deeply, then pulled back. We have work to do if we're going to convince 2 planetary governments to accept our bond. As they formulated their plan, Marcus couldn't help but marvel at how his diplomatic mission had transformed. What began with awkward confusion over alien anatomy had evolved into something that might reshape relations between their species forever. And it all started with a bulge that caught his eye. The emergency summit convened in the station's largest conference chamber. On one side sat the Earth delegation, led by Admiral Harrington, his face set in stern lines. Opposite them, the Stellarian High Council representatives, their orange skin displaying varying patterns of freckles that Marcus now recognized as indicators of their emotional states. And at the center of it all, Marcus and Thalia sat together, hands intertwined beneath the table. This is unprecedented, said Counselor Nerath, the eldest Stellarian present. His freckles formed tight, anxious clusters. A spontaneous reproductive bond between species should be biologically impossible. Yet our scans confirm it, added Dr. Alera, the Zalarian Chief Medical Officer. Ambassador Thalia's pouch contains a viable genetic template derived from Commander Ray's DNA, restructured to be compatible with Zalarian biology. Admiral Harrington leaned forward. And you're certain this poses no health risk to either of them? On the contrary, Dr. Alera replied, her freckles pulsing with scientific excitement. The bond appears to be enhancing both their physiologies. Commander Ray's cellular regeneration has increased by 12%, and Ambassador Thalia's neurological responses show improved efficiency. Marcus exchanged a surprised glance with Thalia. They'd submitted to preliminary medical scans, but hadn't been informed of these results. The implications for interspecies medicine are extraordinary. continued Dr. Valera. If we could understand how their bodies achieve this compatibility, we might revolutionize treatment options for both our species. Which is precisely why they must be separated and studied individually, interjected General Thorne, Earth's military representative. Now, this is a matter of planetary security. Thalia's grip tightened on Marcus's hand. With respect, General, our bond is not a weapon to be dismantled for study. The ambassador is correct, Counselor Nerath said. In Zalarian culture, a reproductive bond is sacred. To forcibly separate them would violate our most fundamental laws. And what about Earth's laws, General Thorne countered. Lieutenant Commander Ray took no authorization to form a permanent biological connection with an alien representative. I wasn't aware I needed permission to fall in love, Marcus said quietly, causing a ripple of reactions around the table. Admiral Harrington sighed. The personal aspects aside, we have a security situation. The Purity Vanguard has made threats against both Commander Ray and Ambassador Thalia. Our intelligence suggests they're planning action against this station. All the more reason to evacuate them both to Earth, said General Thorne. Or to Zalaria, countered Counselor Nerath. Thalia rose from her seat, her posture regal. We propose an alternative, joint protective custody here on the station with a combined security detail. Meanwhile, we voluntarily submit to non-invasive study of our bond. Study, not experimentation, Marcus added, standing beside her. Our bodies remain our own. A murmur ran through both delegations. Before anyone could respond, the station's alarm system blared to life. Security breach in Docking Bay 3, announced the automated system. Unknown hostiles have boarded the station. The room erupted into controlled chaos. Guards moved to protect the delegates while Admiral Harrington accessed the security feed on his datapad. It's them, he confirmed grimly. Purity Vanguard, at least 12 operatives, heavily armed. Marcus instinctively moved closer to Thalia, his tactical training kicking in. They must have infiltrated the maintenance crew. Standard procedure would be to secure this room first. As if on cue, the conference room doors sealed with a heavy thunk. Emergency lockdown initiated, the system announced. That should keep them out, General Thorne said. Or trap us in, Thalia countered, her hand moving to the holster on her thigh. Zalarian ships have override capabilities for these systems. Dr. Aletra approached them, scanner in hand. While we wait for security to handle this situation, perhaps we could continue our analysis? The stress response might reveal new aspects of your bond. Marcus stared at her incredulously. You want to study us now? During an attack? Science waits for no one, Dr. Wallera replied, her freckles pulsing with undiminished enthusiasm. Thalia placed a restraining hand on the doctor's scanner. This isn't the time, Doctor. A crackling sound from the ventilation system drew everyone's attention. A thin mist began seeping into the room. Gas! Shouted Admiral Harrington. Everyone, emergency breathers! The delegates scrambled for the emergency equipment stored around the conference room. But Marcus noticed Thalia wasn't moving. Instead, her eyes were closed, and her freckles were glowing with an intensity he hadn't seen before. Thalia, he touched her arm. Her eyes snapped open, now glowing with the same light as her freckles. I can feel them, Marcus, through you. Our bond is expanding. A strange warmth spread through Marcus's chest, radiating outward. Suddenly, he could sense presences beyond the room. Hostile minds moving through the station's corridors. What's happening to us? He whispered. The danger is accelerating our connection. Her hand moved to her pulsing reproductive pouch. The template is activating defensive protocols. Around them, delegates were beginning to cough as the gas spread. But remarkably, Marcus felt no effects. Neither did Thalia. We're immune, he realized. Not just immune. Thalia's voice had taken on a resonant quality. Enhanced. The bond is protecting us both. The ventilation grate above them crashed to the floor, and a masked figure dropped into the room, weapon raised. Without thinking, Marcus moved with unprecedented speed, disarming the attacker with a fluid motion that felt both foreign and natural. Across the room, Thalia was moving with similar enhanced grace, her body glowing faintly as she disabled another intruder who had breached from a different entry point. They worked in perfect synchrony, as if sharing a single mind. Marcus could anticipate Thalia's movements before she made them, and he sensed she could do the same with his. Within minutes, they had neutralized 4 Purity Vanguard operatives while while the security teams dealt with the others throughout the station. As the gas cleared and the delegates recovered, all eyes were fixed on Marcus and Thalia, standing in the center of the room, their bodies still faintly luminous. "What the hell was that?" Admiral Harrington demanded, staring at them. Dr. Alera was frantically recording readings on her scanner. "Fascinating. Their bond has created a symbiotic defense mechanism. They're sharing abilities, strength, even consciousness to some degree." Counselor Narath approached them slowly. "In all our history, there has never been a bond like this. You are something new." General Thorne's expression had shifted from suspicion to calculation. "The military applications alone are not for discussion," Marcus interrupted firmly. "This isn't a weapon. It's a connection between two people." Thalia nodded, her glow gradually subsiding. "A connection that just saved everyone in this room." Admiral Harrington studied them for a long moment. "It seems your request for joint custody has been forcefully demonstrated. But this changes the terms. You're no longer just a diplomatic curiosity. You're a security asset." "We're people," Thalia corrected, "with rights recognized by both our governments." "People who apparently develop superhuman abilities when threatened," General Thorne muttered. Dr. Alera could barely contain her excitement. "We must begin comprehensive studies immediately. The scientific implications will be explored with our consent," Marcus stated, "and our conditions." As the delegates broke into heated discussion around them, Thalia leaned close to Marcus. "That bulge between my legs is looking a lot more interesting now, isn't it?" she whispered, her freckles pulsing with mischief despite the gravity of their situation. "Despite everything," Marcus laughed, "I think we're well past that point of curiosity." Her hand found his again. "Do you regret it? Staring at me that first day?" "Not for a second," he replied, squeezing her fingers. "Though I never imagined it would lead to interstellar incident and spontaneous superpowers. The universe works in mysterious ways, Commander Ray. Around them, the future of human-Zellarian relations was being frantically debated. But in that moment, all that mattered was the bond between them. A connection that had begun with a curious glance and now might reshape the galaxy." "Remarkable," Dr. Alera murmured, reviewing the holographic display of Marcus and Thalia's intertwined genetic structures. "In just 1 week, your bond has evolved beyond anything we predicted." Marcus and Thalia sat side by side in the station's newly established research lab and on electrodes monitoring their vital signs. After the Purity Vanguard attack, they had agreed to limited scientific study with strict boundaries and the right to terminate any procedure that made them uncomfortable. "Can you explain what we're looking at?"